Twilight Fables, where the tales you thought you knew take a darker path, twisting into shapes both dreadful and strange. Tonight, we begin the story of a cursed castle, a monstrous lord, and the betrayal of blood that would doom them all. This is Beauty and the Beast, as it was never meant to be told. The man had always been hungry, not for food, though he never cared to miss a meal, not for affection, though his late wife had given it freely before her death. He hungered for wealth, glittering, endless, suffocating wealth. Maurice, father of 3 sons and 1 daughter, had been raised in a house of disappointment, born with more ambition than talent. He squandered what little fortune his family had left on failed ventures, cheap wines, and hollow promises. When his ship sank, when creditors came to claim what he owed, when the house grew bare of gold and bread alike, Maurice's hunger sharpened. His sons scattered to seek their own survival, but his daughter remained, Belle. She was his last jewel, the only treasure left to his name. He spoke often of how her beauty would set them right again, that some nobleman would take pity on their household, take her hand and fill their coffers. But Belle never entertained such fantasies. She dreamed not of suitors or silks, but of quiet things, books, gardens, the songs of birds. The life she longed for was simple, yet it stood ever out of reach, strangled by her father's greed. And then came the storm. Maurice's last surviving cart horse stumbled through the forest, weighed down with scraps of lumber and broken goods he meant to sell in the city. A violent wind rose, snapping branches like bones, tearing the path into a maze of shadows. Maurice, cursing, urged the horse forward, but in his haste he made a wrong turn. The forest deepened, and soon he found himself among trees older than memory, where no merchant's wheel had ever turned. At last he stumbled upon it, the castle. It rose from the woods like a carcass of stone, its towers crooked, its gates yawning with rusted iron. Lightning split the sky, and for a moment Maurice thought it abandoned, ruined. But when the gates groaned open of their own accord, when the torches flared alive, as if greeting him, he smelled not decay, but incense, spice, and the rich perfume of roses. His hunger stirred. Inside, the castle seemed less a ruin than a palace, yet not a palace made for men. Statues with too many eyes watched from the walls. Tapestries shifted when he did not look directly at them, and everywhere treasure gleamed. Goblets of silver, candlesticks of gold, jewelled mirrors reflecting faces that did not belong to him. Maurice's breath caught. His debtors, his failures, his hungry years, all could be undone by what lay here. He stuffed his coat pockets with pearls, slipped rings onto his thick fingers, drank from chalices as though he were already their master. No one came to stop him. It was only when he reached the garden that his hands began to shake. The storm had passed. Yet the air within the walls was strange, heavy. Roses grew in rows upon rows, their petals glistening with unnatural dew, colours too deep to be born of soil, red as spilled wine, white as bone, black as midnight frost, and at the garden's heart, behind a wrought iron gate, stood a single rose that outshone them all. It pulsed with an inner glow, as though lit from within. The stem bore thorns the length of daggers, and the petals quivered without wind. Morris's eyes widened. This was no common bloom. This was power, beauty, wealth beyond crowns or coin. With such a treasure, kings would bow to him. He reached for the gate. Leave it. The voice rolled like thunder, so near that Morris dropped the pearls from his fist. He spun and beheld the beast. No mask of humanity softened him. No candlelight could hide the monstrous truth of his form. Horns curled from his brow. His eyes gleamed like coals through smoke. His hands were vast, clawed, tipped with black nails meant for rending. Fur bristled across his frame, though his posture was tall, regal, almost human. Morris stumbled back, words choking in his throat. You steal from my home, the beast growled, advancing. You drink from my cup, adorn yourself with my jewels, and now you reach for that which is sacred. He pointed one claw toward the rose, and the air trembled. For this you will die. Morris collapsed onto his knees, the pearls scattering into the grass. Sweat pooled on his brow. Mercy, he cried. I meant no offence. I was lost, only seeking shelter. Spare me, and I shall trouble you no more. The beast's lip curled, exposing fangs. Do you think my mercy so cheap? You are a thief. Morris's mind whirled. Death loomed in those glowing eyes. And then inspiration struck. As wicked and desperate as his nature, he raised trembling hands, not in surrender, but in bargain. Wait, he gasped. Take my daughter instead. The words hung in the garden, heavy, vile. The beast stilled. His breath hissed between his teeth, hot as embers. Your daughter. Yes. Maurice scrambled forward on his knees. Belle, she is young, she is strong, she can serve you, she can stay in my place, and I will return to the forest and never again cross your path. The beast leaned down, shadows cloaking his monstrous frame. You offer your own blood to save yourself? Maurice swallowed, his cowardice laid bare. Better she suffer than I perish. She is unwed, of little use to me, but to you perhaps. His smile faltered at the gleam in those burning eyes. She may prove valuable. The beast said nothing for a long, dreadful moment. The storm beyond the walls seemed to hold its breath. Finally, with a voice like a closing tomb, he spoke. Bring her. If she comes willingly, I will release you. If not, your life ends here. Maurice nodded furiously, as though granted a reprieve from the gallows. He gathered his coat, hid the trembling of his hands, and promised, "She will come. Belle obeys me in all things." The beast's gaze darkened, unreadable. "Do not mistake my mercy for weakness, thief. If you break your word, I will find you." Morris did not wait for dismissal. He fled the garden, fled the castle, fled the glowing rose that still swayed as though laughing at him. His horse bolted through the forest, carrying him homeward. Belle waited at the door, lantern in hand, her face pale with worry. "Father, you are safe," she cried, reaching for him. But when she saw the pearls still clinging to his pockets, the rings gleaming on his hands, her relief soured into dread. Morris's eyes darted past her into the empty house, already imagining it filled with the riches of that castle. But he schooled his features into sorrow, clasped her shoulders, and whispered with false gravity, "Belle, my darling, I have made a bargain to save us both." And as he told her of the beast, of the offer made in the garden of roses, Belle's heart turned golden. The cottage was quiet that night, though not from peace. A stillness had fallen over the rooms, the kind that comes after lightning strikes too near, when the air smells of smoke and everyone waits for the fire to spread. Belle sat at the hearth, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale from the tale her father had told. He had spun it, of course, not as a confession of cowardice, but as a martyr's story. How he had faced a beast, a monster cloaked in shadow and wrath, who would have devoured him whole, if not for Morris's cunning. He had offered Belle not as a sacrifice, he claimed, but as an opportunity. "You will go to him," Morris had said, his eyes gleaming with false conviction, "and you will tame him. He has riches beyond imagining, Belle. If you are clever, if you win his favour, you will bring us out of ruin. Think of it, a castle of treasure, endless feasts, servants at your command, all of it within your grasp, if you only endure his company." Endure his company. That was how he framed her fate. Belle listened, silent. She thought of the garden her father described, of the rose that pulsed with unnatural light. She thought of the beast's voice, thunder over stone, and the bargain struck. Her father had not been forced. He had not been cornered. He had given her away with eagerness, as one might barter an old horse for grain. That night, while her father drank himself into sleep, Belle packed her satchel. She tucked in the little book she loved most, a volume of fables worn soft by her hands. She placed a ribbon in her hair, the one her mother had given her long ago, and when the dawn came, she did not wait for her father's reminder. She stepped onto the road, with the satchel over her shoulder, her face set toward the forest where the beast awaited. The forest seemed to remember her. The trees leaned closer, their bark etched with faces she did not dare look at too long. Birds shrieked and then fell silent as she passed. The path curved unnaturally, bending always toward the heart of the woods. Belle's steps were light, but her breath grew heavy, each inhalation tinged with the perfume of roses, though none bloomed here. At last, the gates loomed before her. They creaked open without touch, as if the castle had been watching for her since the bargain was made. Inside, the silence was not emptiness, but expectation. Torches flared, lighting her way through hallways lined with riches, golden platters, jewelled goblets, paintings whose eyes seemed to follow her. She should have felt awe. Instead, she felt watched, measured, and then she heard it, the sound of claws against stone. He emerged from the shadows at the head of a sweeping staircase. The beast. Belle stiffened but did not shrink back. He was terrible, yes. Horns curving like a ram's, fangs catching the light, fur bristling along broad shoulders. But there was something more in his presence. Not malice, as her father had described, but weight, a grief so deep it seemed carved into his bones. "You came," he said, voice low and rough. Belle lifted her chin. "My father made a bargain. I honour it." The beast descended, his claws curling against the banister. "He sent you willingly." Belle's lips pressed into a thin line, eagerly. For a long moment, the beast stared, his burning eyes unreadable. Then he gave a sound like a sigh, heavy as iron. "Then he is more monstrous than I." The words startled her. She had expected threats, perhaps cruelty, but not this. The beast gestured with one massive hand, and the torches along the hall blazed brighter. "This is your home now, Belle. You may walk where you please. You will be given food, clothing, books, if you wish them. No harm shall come to you here." Belle blinked. "You mean I am not your prisoner?" "You are not your father," the beast said simply. Something in his tone, the weary certainty, the refusal to look at her directly, unsettled her more than rage would have. Belle bowed her head in a small nod. "Then I will stay." Days passed, then weeks. The castle shifted around her, as though testing her. Doors that once led to empty rooms revealed libraries filled with volumes she had only dreamed of reading. Corridors opened onto gardens where roses bloomed in impossible colours. Meals appeared at long tables, though she never saw a cook. The air always smelled faintly of spice and rose, and the beast was there, always near, though never too near. He dined with her in silence, his great hands awkward on the silverware. He walked with her through the halls, but kept his distance, his shadow stretching long behind. Sometimes, at night, she heard his claws pacing outside her chamber, as if he guarded her door. He asked her nothing, demanded nothing, yet his eyes, when they caught hers, glowed with a hunger that was not greed, nor cruelty, but longing. It was on the first full moon since her arrival that he spoke the words that would change everything. They sat in the garden, the one where the Enchanted rose, grew behind its iron gate. The moonlight bathed it in silver fire, its petals trembling as though stirred by breath. Belle watched it with unease, for the rose seemed alive, aware, listening. The beast's gaze lingered on her instead. "Do you miss your home?" he asked. Belle started, for it was the first time he had broken the silence of their nightly walks. She considered her answer carefully. "I miss what it could have been, but not what it is." His eyes softened. "Your father," she hesitated. "He is my father. That is all I can say." The beast lowered his head, his horns catching the moonlight like dark crowns. "Then hear this. Once each month you may return to him. I will grant you that freedom, but you must return by the next moon, or you will never find this castle again." Belle's breath caught. "You would allow that? Why?" The beast's claws flexed in the grass. "Because you deserve a choice, Belle. More than I was given, more than your father gave you." The sincerity in his voice left her momentarily speechless. At last she whispered, "Thank you." The beast inclined his head, but said no more. His eyes returned to the rose, and Belle thought she saw in them not possession, but sorrow. When she returned home that first month, Maurice was waiting. His eyes widened when he saw her alive, her dress finer than any he had ever provided, her cheeks flushed with health. He drew her into the house with forced tears, declaring how he had feared for her every day. But Belle saw the truth in his gaze, not relief, not love, hunger. She told him little, only that the beast had kept his word, that she was safe, that she was permitted to visit. But even that was too much. Maurice's hands trembled as she spoke of the castle's endless halls, its libraries, its feasts. When she mentioned the rose garden, his breath quickened. "A single bloom?" he pressed. "A rose that glows like fire? Belle, such a thing could buy a kingdom." Belle's expression hardened. "It is not for you, father. The beast guards it. He treasures it above all else." Maurice's eyes narrowed, the gleam of old greed sparking anew. "Then it must be worth more than gold itself." Belle's heart sank. She had hoped her monthly visits might bring comfort. Instead, they had lit a fire she could not extinguish. Her second month at the castle passed more swiftly. The beast grew bolder in his speech, asking about the stories she read, about her mother long gone, about the dreams she carried for a life she knew she could never claim. His voice was deep but soft, a rumble like a storm that never broke. And though his form remained monstrous, Belle began to see the man within it, not because his features softened, they did not, but because of the gentleness in his silences, the care in his eyes. When the next moon waned, she returned home again. Maurice was worse. He pressed her for details of the treasures, the jewels, the feasts. He asked if the beast ever slept, if guards patrolled, if doors were locked. His questions chilled her. "Father," she pleaded. "Do not think of such things. The beast has shown me nothing but kindness." Maurice sneered. "Kindness from a monster? No, Belle. He is fattening you for some purpose. You will see, and when you do, it will be too late." But Belle had already begun to wonder if the opposite was true. By the 3rd month, her heart was divided. She dreaded her father's greed, but longed for her time in the castle. The beast had become her confidant, her companion. Still, she noticed a change in him too. Some nights, she caught him staring into mirrors, only to turn away with a growl, as though disgusted by what he saw. Once, she glimpsed him in the shadows, his great hands gripping his face as though he could tear the fur from his flesh. The rose, too, seemed to pulse more dimly, its glow fading each time she returned. When she asked him why, he only said, "It is not for you to bear, Belle. Not yet." But she knew something was unravelling, and beyond the castle walls, her father's greed grew teeth. The moon waned and waxed, and each cycle tightened the knot of fate around Belle's life. Her 3rd visit home had been the worst yet. Maurice, far from grateful for her return, had grown restless, pacing the cottage like a wolf in too small a cage. He pounced upon her the moment she crossed the threshold, tugging her satchel from her shoulders to rifle through it, hoping for jewels, gold, anything she might have smuggled out of the castle. "There is nothing," Belle told him, gently at first, then with a sharper edge. Her father's lips curled. "Nothing? You live among riches I could never dream of, and you bring me nothing." Belle held her ground. "The beast does not give me treasures. He gives me freedom, food, kindness, more than you ever did." The words slipped before she could stop them. Maurice's eyes darkened. "You ungrateful wretch," he hissed. "Everything I've done for you, for this family. You think I wanted to give you away? It was survival, Belle. My sacrifice." "Your sacrifice?" Her voice trembled. "You offered me like cattle." He struck the table with his fist, rattling the few chipped dishes left. "Better you live in luxury than I rot in a beast's belly. Do not twist my generosity into betrayal." Belle's heart burned, but she swallowed the words she wanted to hurl. Nothing she said could cut through the greed that wrapped around him like chains. Instead, she left him to his pacing and dreams of stolen treasure. That night, she slept with her book clutched to her chest, praying the next morning would come swiftly so she might return to the castle. The beast noticed her unrest the moment she arrived. They met in the great hall, as they always did. Candles flickered, throwing light across walls hung with faded tapestries of kings long forgotten. The beast approached, his claws soft against the marble, his gaze searching her face. "You are troubled," he said. Belle did not deny it. "My father, he grows more bitter each time I see him. He covets what you have." The beast's jaw tightened. "Your father's hunger is a bottomless pit. Nothing will ever fill it. She nodded slowly. I know, and yet, he is my father. The beast turned from her, pacing before the long table set with untouched food. His tail lashed behind him, a restless rhythm. Family is not always what we are born into. Sometimes it is what we choose. Belle studied him, the words sinking deep. She had never thought of the beast as family, and yet, in the silence of the castle, in his strange, halting kindness, she felt a bond stronger than blood. Why do you care for me? She asked softly. The beast stilled, his shoulders lifted with a breath that seemed to scrape against his ribs. Because you see me, he murmured, and do not look away. Belle's cheeks warmed, and she could not answer. The days passed with uneasy grace. Belle spent her mornings wandering the library, reading stories to the unseen air. Sometimes she thought she heard whispers in response, voices layered over one another, as though the books themselves breathed with her words. She spent her afternoons in the gardens where roses of every colour turned their heads toward her as though she were the sun. At night she dined with the beast. Sometimes he asked her questions. Sometimes he simply sat in silence, as if the sound of her voice was enough. But she began to notice shadows in his behaviour. More often, she caught him staring at mirrors, but not to admire. He would glare at his reflection, his claws clenching as though he could strike it down. She once saw him smash a silver platter when it reflected his face. His growls echoed through the halls afterward, reverberating like thunder trapped in stone. What torments you? Belle asked one night, her hands folded on the table as he pushed food around his plate without eating. The beast's eyes flickered up to hers, then down again. You would not understand. Then help me, she pressed. Show me. His claws stilled. For a moment, she thought he would rage, but instead, he rose and beckoned her. She followed him through winding halls, deeper and deeper, until they stood before a tall set of doors, carved with roses and thorns. Inside was the chamber of the rose. It glowed upon its pedestal, brighter than any candle, its petals trembling with a pulse like a heartbeat. Around it, the air shimmered with power, bending light like water. Belle gasped, her hand lifting unconsciously toward it. Do not touch, the beast warned sharply, his voice more desperate than angry. She lowered her hand, trembling. What is it? The measure of my curse, he said. His gaze lingered on the rose, sorrow etched into every line of his monstrous face. As long as it blooms, I may yet hope, but if it withers before, his voice caught, rough as stone. Before love is freely given, I am doomed. Belle's breath caught. Doomed to what? He looked at her then, and she understood without words. Doomed to remain what he was, a beast forever. When Belle returned home at the next moon, she kept this knowledge close, unwilling to share. Her father pressed her, of course. He clawed at her sleeves, demanded she tell him of treasures, of secrets, of weakness. She tried to deflect, but when he saw the flicker in her eyes as she spoke of the rose, his suspicion sharpened. "There is something more," he said, voice low, oily. "Something you hide from me." "There is nothing," Belle insisted, but her tone betrayed her. Maurice's eyes narrowed. "A rose that glows, a rose the beast treasures above all else. Do not think me blind, Belle. If that rose holds such power, then it must be mine." "No," she cried, the word torn from her throat before she could think. "You must never touch it. Promise me, father. Swear it." But Maurice only smiled, the greedy smile she had seen when he won at cards, when he thought he had cheated fate itself. We shall see. The castle felt different when she returned the next time. Darker, the air hung heavy, and the rose in its chamber glowed faintly weaker. The beast seemed more restless, pacing the halls, his growls echoing through the corridors. One evening, she found him in the library, his massive form hunched in a chair too small for him, a book open in his claws. He was not reading. His eyes were fixed on the page, but unfocused, haunted. "You are fading," Belle said softly. The beast did not deny it. "The rose weakens. My time runs short." Her heart twisted. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she cared for him, that she felt for him something her father had never earned, but the words stuck in her throat, fear binding her, fear not of him, but of what it would mean to confess. Instead, she said, "Then let me stay. Let me not return home. My father will endure." But the beast shook his great head, his horns catching the firelight. "No, I will not take your choice from you. Go, return, you are free." She wanted to argue, but his eyes silenced her. They were filled with sorrow, but beneath it, with love. Back home, Maurice was not waiting with open arms, but with a plan. Belle entered to find maps sprawled across the table, charcoal sketches of the castle drawn from her unintentional descriptions. He had written notes, questions, half-baked schemes. "What are you doing?" Belle whispered, dread rising in her chest. Maurice looked up, his eyes fever-bright. "I am going to the castle, Belle. I will take what should have been mine all along. You have lived there long enough, seen enough to tell me where the treasure lies, where the rose grows." "You cannot," she cried. "The beast will kill you." Her father laughed, sharp and bitter. "He did not kill me before, did he? No. He let me go. A fool's mercy. And if the rose is his weakness, then I will claim it. With its power, I shall be richer than kings." Belle's blood ran cold. She thought of the beast's sorrow, of the fading rose, of the curse tightening like a noose. If her father laid hands upon that flower, she feared it would not only doom the beast, but destroy what fragile bond they had built. "Please, father," she begged, tears in her eyes, "do not do this. But Maurice was deaf to her pleas. The hunger in him had drowned all else. The days dragged in the village as Belle's heart grew heavier with each passing moon. Maurice's obsession with the castle festered like a wound that refused to heal. At first, he merely asked questions, prodded for information, feigned curiosity about her stay. But as weeks turned to months, his hunger became sharper, more urgent. Each time Belle returned from the castle, she carried with her not gold or jewels, but stories of the beast's kindness, of the rose's glow, of the endless halls and gardens that stretched like dreamscapes beyond reason. Maurice heard her descriptions and felt a hunger that no meal could sate. It gnawed at him, pulling him into fevered scheming. "Tell me everything," he demanded one evening, his voice low and urgent, as though speaking too loudly would frighten the treasures themselves away. "Where are the halls? How many doors? How are the servants? And this rose, show me." Belle's face paled. "Father, I cannot. The beast trusts me. You would betray him if you tried to enter." He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that grated against the walls. "Betray him? No, child. I will claim what should be mine. He is but a beast, and beasts are bound by their own rules. I will not break them. I will master them." Belle recoiled. She had always known her father to be greedy, selfish, and cruel, but the fire now in his eyes made him almost unrecognizable. She had never seen him truly dangerous before. Now she did, and it terrified her. That night, she could not sleep. She paced the small room her father had claimed as his own, haunted by visions of the castle's towers and the glowing rose. The memory of the beast's eyes, sorrowful and patient, burned into her mind. She knew, somehow, that Maurice would not stop until he had taken it for himself. Morning came, grey and cold, with a mist hanging over the village like a ghost. Belle dressed quickly and slipped outside, needing air to soothe the panic rising in her chest. She walked through the empty streets, past the shuttered shops, past the silent wells, until she found herself at the edge of the forest. The trees swayed in the wind, shadows stretching long across the mossy ground. She hesitated at the path that led to the castle, but a strange compulsion tugged her forward. She had to see him, had to warn him, had to, somehow, make right the wrong that had begun long before she arrived. The beast awaited her in the garden, as he always did. The enchanted rose trembled at the centre of the wrought iron gate, its glow faint and flickering. Belle approached slowly, hands folded in front of her. "You came early," the beast said, his claws resting lightly on the pedestal beside the rose. "I could not stay home," Belle whispered. "I feared my father. She stopped, struggling to find words. "He is planning to return to the castle. He wants the treasures. He will not be satisfied until he takes the rose." The beast's claws clenched, A low growl rumbled in his chest. Your father is a coward, cloaked in greed. I had hoped you would shield him from temptation. I had hoped. His voice trailed off, heavy with something Belle could not name. I had hoped mercy might have saved him. Belle took a step closer. He is not your concern, truly. You have been generous, even too generous. But he will come, and when he does, her voice trembled, tears pricking her eyes, he will destroy what little chance there is for your freedom. The beast did not answer at first. He stared at the rose, as though willing it to remain vibrant, but Belle saw his shoulders slump, the claws of despair wrapped around him. It does not matter, he said finally. Even if he never touches it, I am doomed. I can feel it in my bones. I cannot become human. Not now. Not ever. Belle froze. The words struck her like a blow. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That cannot be. The rose, the kindness you showed me. Surely there is still hope. The beast's eyes, glowing like embers in the moonlight, met hers. Hope is a cruel companion, he said softly. It torments, it teases, and then it leaves you with nothing but what is real. And what is real is that I am a beast, and I will remain so. No love, no sacrifice, nothing can undo it now. Belle's hands clutched at the edges of her dress. Then I will stay. I do not care what form you take. I care for you, The beast turned from her, shadowing her words with silence. His tail lashed against the grass, the sound sharp and angry. No, Belle, you do not belong to this fate. You do not deserve this cage, this endless torment, this life bound to a cursed creature. I release you. Go home. Leave this place. Her lips parted, unable to form a protest. The weight of his words crushed her chest. She had come to love him. Not the beastly form, but the kindness, the patience, the loneliness he hid behind claws and fangs. And now he cast her away, not from cruelty, but from love. Belle sank to her knees. But I cannot leave you. You can and you must, the beast said, voice trembling with a fury held in check. I will not see you tied to me while I rot in this monstrous form. Go, Belle, live, and remember me only in kindness, not in sorrow. Back in the village, Morris worked in secret. His obsession had become fevered. He pored over maps, sketches, and Belle's descriptions until every corridor, every hidden stair, every secret door of the castle was etched into his mind. The glow of the enchanted rose haunted him in dreams, calling him with promises of power, wealth, and immortality. He did not sleep, he did not eat. Only the thought of the rose, of the treasures, of seizing what the beast had hoarded, drove him. Belle tried to plead, tried to warn him, tried to make him see reason, but Morris would not listen. Do not think to stop me, child, he hissed. I will take it. I will have it. The beast may be a monster, but the rose belongs to me. Belle's heart sank. She realised in that dreadful instant that her father would do exactly what she feared, not for love, not for duty, not for anything but his own selfish hunger. As the next moon approached, the air thickened with anticipation and dread. Belle returned to the castle one final time before the cycle would bring her home again. The beast greeted her quietly, his eyes duller than usual. "You have returned," he said, voice low, "and I must let you go." She grasped his claws with both hands. "No, you cannot. I will stay. Let me help you. Let me." The beast shook his massive head. "I cannot bear to see you trapped by what I am. I cannot bear to see you lose yourself because of me. Go home, Belle. Leave me to what I must endure." Her tears fell freely, but she obeyed. She would leave him, though her heart tore itself apart. She would return to a home where her father's greed waited, knowing it would bring ruin. She would leave the only being in the world who had shown her kindness beyond measure. And somewhere deep in the forest, Maurice plotted his return, never knowing that his greed would not only destroy what he coveted, but seal the beast's fate forever. Maurice's nights were restless. The candlelight burned low as he pored over the castle's layout in his mind. Each room, corridor, and hallway memorized with precision. Maps, sketches, and Belle's descriptions littered the table before him, forming a blueprint of the beast's domain. Sleep had abandoned him, driven off by the obsession that had taken root like a parasite in his chest. He saw the rose in his dreams, crimson as blood, glowing as though it contained the sun. In his visions, it hovered above the pedestal, fragile and perfect, and he reached for it. He felt its warmth, its power, and in those moments, the castle itself seemed to breathe beneath his hands. He awoke, each time with his fists clenched, knowing he would not rest until he possessed it. Belle begged him to abandon the plan, to let the beast's mercy remain untested. "Father," she pleaded, her voice trembling, "do not go. You cannot comprehend the danger you court. The beast does not forgive thieves, and your greed will not shield you from his wrath." Maurice's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Danger? Pah! Danger is for those who do not seize opportunity. The beast has treasures beyond imagining, and this rose, Belle, this rose can make a man rich beyond reason. I will not be denied." She pressed her palms to her face, silent tears slipping between her fingers. Maurice was not listening, could never listen. She had always known, deep down, that he would choose wealth over her safety, but to see it laid bare, to feel it in the pit of her stomach, like a stone, was a torment she could not escape. The night of his departure, Maurice dressed in dark clothing, concealing maps and tools under his cloak. He waited until the moon was hidden behind storm clouds, masking his movements in shadow. Belle tried to stop him, clinging to his arm, begging, "Father, do not. You will ruin everything. You will doom him. And you." Maurice shook her off with impatient force. "Stay here, child. Your concern is misplaced. I will return with treasures that will put our family above all others. Fear is for the weak." Her hands went slack. She knew then that she could not restrain him, and even if she could, he would resist with the fury of a man possessed. With a heavy heart, she watched him vanish into the forest, swallowed by mist and darkness. The journey was treacherous. Maurice's horse stumbled over roots and rocks, hooves slipping in the wet mud of the forest floor. Thunder rolled overhead, and lightning split the sky, illuminating the twisted shapes of trees that seemed to reach for him, as if warning him away. Yet he pressed on, driven by greed and visions of the rose, its petals glowing brighter in his imagination than any reality could hope to achieve. As the castle emerged from the fog, a shadow among shadows, Maurice's pulse quickened. The gates loomed before him, and the air shimmered with an otherworldly chill. He pressed forward, hand to the latch, but froze when the great doors swung open with a groan. The beast was waiting. Maurice staggered back, fear tangling with greed. The monster's claws caught the torchlight, gleaming sharp and deadly. Horns curved like scimitars above his brow, and his eyes glowed, two burning coals in the dark. "You return," the beast said, voice low and rumbling like distant thunder. Maurice swallowed, gathering courage from the last shred of his arrogance. I have come for what is mine," he declared. "The treasures, the rose, the wealth of your halls. I claim it by right." The beast's lip curled, revealing sharp fangs. "By right? You offered your daughter to save your own hide, and now you claim my generosity as weakness? You would steal from me?" Maurice's hands trembled, but he did not step back. I only take what I deserve. The rose, the treasures, all of it will secure my family's future. You will not stop me." The beast growled, and the walls of the castle seemed to shiver with his fury. "You are not worthy of what you seek. Every step you take here binds you to the fate you deserve." Maurice's heart beat frantically. The words did not deter him. They sharpened his determination. He stepped forward, inching toward the garden, toward the glow of the rose that pulsed like a heartbeat. But the beast was faster. In a blur of movement, he seized Maurice by the shoulders, lifting him with claws that could crush bone. "Do not force my hand," he warned, voice like iron grinding over stone. "One wrong move, and you will not leave this place alive." Maurice's bravado faltered. "Belle, she will come for me," he cried, panic breaking through. The beast's eyes narrowed, a slow, terrible fire igniting within. "Do not speak her name in vain," he growled. "You offered her to me once. She is mine to protect. You would trade her life for your greed. Morris's knees buckled beneath him, and desperation overtook him. He clawed at the beast's fur, twisting, pleading, bargaining. Take her instead. I will give her up. Spare me, and I will. The beast's claws tightened. Morris's blood ran cold as he realised the truth. The monster was capable of cruelty, yes, but his mercy was a blade, and Morris had just handed himself to the sharpest edge. You offered her before, the beast said, teeth gleaming, and I accepted. You think I will now take back what is mine to protect? No, you will pay for your betrayal. Morris's pleas turned to whimpers. His greed, his arrogance, his false courage, all dissolved under the weight of the beast's judgment. The garden awaited, roses trembling in the night air, the central bloom glowing dimly, as if sensing the corruption entering its domain. The beast carried Morris to the edge of the rose's protective gate. His claws were merciful but firm, pinning Morris against the iron bars. Your life is mine to command, the beast intoned, and yet I see a way to test your true nature. Morris's eyes widened. What? What do you mean? Your daughter, the beast said. She is the measure of your heart. Will you value her above your greed or above your fear? Will you sacrifice what is most precious to you to save yourself? Morris's lips quivered. I will do anything. The beast leaned closer, his shadow swallowing Morris in darkness. Anything, you say? Then give her up freely, and I may yet let you live. Refuse, and you will perish here, and your family will have only your folly to remember. Maurice's face twisted in terror. His fingers dug into the iron bars. I give her to you. Take her. Do what you will. Spare me. The beast's growl rolled like thunder, and for a moment the night seemed to hold its breath. So be it, he said. You are a vile creature, Maurice. You have offered the life of your child to save yourself, and thus you earn only the fate your greed dictates. Maurice stumbled backward, the weight of his cowardice crushing him. The beast released him with a shove, sending him sprawling in the mud, soaked with rain and humiliation. The glow of the rose seemed to pulse brighter, as if acknowledging the truth of the moment. The father had chosen greed over family, and the beast's patience had been tested to its limit. Belle, arriving too late to stop the confrontation, found Maurice on the forest path, trembling and cursing under his breath. She approached cautiously, her eyes taking in the beast's silhouette in the distance, towering, still, and inexorably tragic. Father, she said softly, what have you done? He looked at her with hatred and fear tangled in his gaze. I only sought the treasures, Belle, the rose, the wealth. It was for us. Her heart clenched, and she understood then the full extent of his corruption. She had hoped for goodness, some shred of honour. Instead, she found nothing but avarice. The beast's roar echoed across the forest, a sound so deep It seemed to shake the roots of the earth itself. The rose's glow flickered, ominous, and Maurice realised too late that the castle's magic was no simple trinket to steal. It responded only to those worthy, only to those who approached with humility and truth. Maurice's greed had condemned him, and Belle, heartbroken, understood that this night marked the beginning of an ending that could not be undone. The storm had passed, leaving the forest wet and trembling, droplets clinging to the leaves like tears. The castle loomed ahead, silent and immovable, its windows darkened as though mourning. Belle's steps were slow, each footfall heavy with dread. She had left her father behind, broken and defeated by the beast's judgment, but the weight of what had transpired pressed on her chest like stone. She did not wish to return to the castle, yet she could not bear to stay in the village either. The knowledge of the beast's suffering and her father's betrayal haunted her. The rose, the glowing heart of the castle's magic, would now respond not to hope or kindness, but to the malice that had entered its grounds. And Belle knew, deep in her heart, that this night would mark a turning point from which nothing could return. Inside the castle, the beast prowled the halls, silent but tense. The echo of Maurice's fear, his pleading, and his cowardice lingered like a foul stench. The rose pulsed faintly, dimmer than before, a reminder that the curse binding him was now immutable. The beast had hoped, oh how he had hoped, that love, that the gentle presence of Belle might one day redeem him, restore what had been stolen. But the truth had settled into his bones like iron. He would never become human. The realization left him hollow. For years he had fought despair with patience, with rituals of kindness toward Belle, with fleeting moments of laughter and learning. But now, in the wake of his father's intrusion and the betrayal that had forced his claws to mercy, he saw the futility of it all. Belle, arriving in the great hall, found him crouched low before the fireplace, his massive hands clasped over his muzzle. Smoke curled from the hearth, and the light caught the tips of his horns, turning them to blackened gold. He did not rise when she entered. "I cannot," he said without looking at her. His voice was a guttural whisper, rough with anguish. "I cannot bear the hope any more, Belle. You do not deserve this cage of flesh and shadow that I am. You came with trust, with kindness, and I cannot return it in kind." Belle approached, trembling. "What are you saying?" He lifted his eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light. "I am a beast, and I will remain so. I cannot be the man you would need. You are too pure, too good, to be tied to a creature cursed and broken. Leave. Go home. You are free of this burden. You deserve it." Her hands shook as she reached toward him. "I care for you. I do not care what form you take. I want to stay." The beast's gaze fell from hers, and he let out a growl that rumbled through the hall. "No, you do not understand. I am not mercy. I am not love. I am only this." His claws flexed against the stone floor, leaving scratches that seemed to burn. "You will leave, Belle, or I will not be responsible for what I become if you refuse." Belle sank to her knees. Her voice was choked with grief. "I cannot leave you, not like this." "You must," he repeated, his tone absolute. "For both our sakes, you cannot belong here. You are not meant for this darkness." Her tears fell freely, and for the first time she saw the beast not as a friend, not as a companion, but as a creature undone by the weight of impossibility. His sorrow was not for himself, she realized, but for her, for what she would endure if she remained. The days that followed were empty, hollow echoes of the life she had known. Belle wandered the halls alone, the libraries vast and silent, the gardens overgrown in neglect. The enchanted rose wilted slightly, its glow weaker with each passing moment. She read aloud from her books, spoke to the walls, whispered to the air, but the beast remained distant, pacing, silent, a shadow of the creature she had grown to love. And in the evenings, she would find him in the garden, staring at the rose, lost in the impossibility of transformation. She could not approach him. Her presence seemed to amplify his despair. He had become a being entirely aware of his limits, a soul imprisoned in fur and claws, and no amount of her affection could penetrate that barrier. Meanwhile, Morris's greed festered. In the village, he spread tales of the castle's treasures, enticing neighbours, stirring envy and suspicion. He began to prepare for a return, believing that the beast's attention had been diverted, and that now he could claim the rose and riches unopposed. Belle knew this, and the knowledge weighed upon her as she moved through the castle's echoing halls. "Father will come again," she whispered to herself one night, standing before the dying glow of the enchanted rose. "And when he does, he will bring destruction. I cannot stop him." The beast, overhearing her words, did not reply. He had resigned himself to the impossibility of human hope. His gaze remained fixed on the rose, and for the first time he did not move to intercept her thoughts. He had surrendered to despair, and in that surrender, Belle recognized a new kind of horror. The beast's mercy had limits, and now it was exhausted. The next visit of the moon brought Morris through the forest. Belle heard him before she saw him, the sound of branches snapping, of hurried steps, of breath ragged with anticipation. She ran to the great doors of the hall, hoping to intervene, to prevent the disaster she knew was coming. But the beast would not allow it. He emerged from the shadows, massive and terrible, eyes glowing with fury tempered by sorrow. Belle froze as he spoke. "Step back, Belle. This is not your fight. You have already been too entwined in his folly." "I cannot," she cried. "He will destroy everything. He will take the rose." The beast's claws flexed. "Then he will earn the consequences of his greed. And I will no longer hold back. Not for him, not for anyone." Maurice stumbled into the hall, his eyes widening at the sight of the beast, towering and monstrous, shadows stretching like fingers across the walls. I come for the rose. Give it to me." "You are not worthy," the beast said, voice low and terrible. "And you will not have it." Maurice lunged, foolishly, blindly. The beast's claws moved faster than thought, pinning him to the floor. Maurice screamed, begging, pleading, offering Belle once more, if only he might live. But the beast had heard enough. The cruelty of men had been laid bare before him, and in his chest the final shred of hope for transformation dissolved. The rose's glow flared one last time as the beast approached the pedestal. He touched it with a claw, feeling its warmth, and for an instant he imagined what life could have been. Human hands holding Belle's, laughter in the halls, joy in a world restored. But the fantasy shattered instantly. His reflection in the polished floor mocked him, a beast forever trapped in claws and fur, horns and fangs. He turned from the rose, away from the illusion of what might have been, and faced Belle. "I cannot be who you need. I will never change. And now you must leave before my despair consumes what little kindness remains in me." Belle fell to her knees. "No, I will not abandon you." The beast's eyes softened fleetingly before hardening again. "You are too good for this fate. You are not meant for a life chained to a monster's curse. Leave, live, and forget me." And she did, with a heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Belle left the castle. The doors closed behind her with finality, the echo of the beast's sorrow following her like a shadow she could not outrun. Maurice, left outside the gates, did not even realize the danger he had narrowly escaped. Belle's absence and her father's greed had set the final stage for the curse's unyielding completion. The beast, alone now, wandered the halls. He could no longer tolerate the charade of hope. Every laugh, every gentle touch he had once imagined sharing with Belle now felt like mockery. The rose, once a beacon of possibility, wilted entirely, petals falling silently onto the stone floor. He roamed the castle, silent and terrible, a being defined not by anger, but by the weight of despair. The magic that had once offered him a path to redemption had now turned its back. He was a beast in form and in spirit, and the knowledge of his permanence gnawed at him. Outside, the forest whispered, shadows moved, the echoes of Belle's footsteps and her father's folly lingered. Inside, the beast embraced what he had become, a creature no longer capable of hope, a prisoner of his own monstrous form. And so the castle fell into a new rhythm, silent, dark, haunted by the loss of what could never be restored, ruled by a beast who could no longer bear the thought of love, who could no longer stand the weight of his own impossible fate. The castle had changed. Shadows clung to every corner, crawling along the walls like living things. Corridors that once echoed with laughter now groaned with the weight of despair. The fire in the hearth burned low, flickering in an almost resentful rhythm, as if protesting the absence of hope. The enchanted rose had fallen silent, its petals strewn across the floor, and even the smallest of the garden blooms seemed to wilt in recognition of the beast's sorrow. The villagers noticed the change first. Travellers spoke of a gloom that lingered in the forest, surrounding the castle, a heaviness in the air that caused horses to shy and dogs to bark at nothing. Birds no longer sang near its gates. Even the wind seemed to avoid the area, curling around the towers like a shadow in flight. Inside, the beast moved through his once proud halls with deliberate slowness. Every step echoed in the emptiness, reminding him of what had been lost. He no longer ate with Belle, no longer laughed, no longer found solace in her presence. She had left him at her own peril, heartbroken but alive, and he had let her go, believing it was the only way to preserve what little kindness remained in her. But with her absence came a new, sharper torment, Morris's lingering shadow. The beast sensed the man's greed and cruelty, lingering in the castle's outskirts, planning his return. Even in defeat, Morris's desire for wealth and power was unyielding, a festering wound in the fabric of the enchanted domain. Belle returned to the village, but the sense of dread followed her. She could not sleep, could not eat, could not focus on the mundane life that once comforted her. Every thought, every glance toward the forest reminded her of the beast, of the kindness she had once known and lost. She wandered the village streets at night, haunted by what she had seen and what she had left behind. Her father, meanwhile, had not given up. Morris's obsession with the castle had taken root like a parasite in his mind. He spent nights tracing the paths he had glimpsed in his previous attempt, plotting the best approach to the rose and the treasures beyond. Every sketch and map he had made became a sacred guide, a map toward glory. He ignored the warnings in Belle's eyes, deaf to her pleas. "Father," she begged one night, her voice trembling, "do not go back. You will destroy yourself. You cannot take what is not yours." Morris waved her off with a dismissive hand. "Child, I do not listen to fear. I follow what is mine. The beast will not stop me this time. I am prepared. Belle's lips pressed into a thin line. She could see it in his eyes. The same fire that had driven him the first time, now brighter, sharper, unrelenting. She understood then that no words could sway him. She had failed to protect him, and she had failed to protect the beast. The next night, Maurice returned to the forest. He moved like a shadow, faster and surer than before, emboldened by desperation and greed alike. He avoided paths he had taken previously, knowing the beast's senses were keen. He navigated the thick undergrowth with silent determination, each step a defiance against the warnings etched in his memory. The castle rose before him again, its darkened silhouette more foreboding than ever. The gates were closed, but the beast was inside. Maurice did not hesitate. He would claim the rose, the treasure, all that was beyond his reach until now. He would prove his cunning, his superiority, and his right. Inside, the beast waited. He had known Maurice would return, and he had made his preparations. The halls were silent, but alive with tension, every echo amplified by the stone walls. Shadows shifted like predators, the air thick with magic, no longer tempered by hope or compassion. The beast's eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, tracked every movement. He did not move to attack immediately. Instead, he let Maurice enter, let him feel the false sense of safety that comes from desperation and arrogance. He knew that greed was a sharp instrument, and Maurice's own heart would deliver him to justice far better than claws or fangs ever could. Maurice entered the castle, scanning the halls with fevered eyes. He passed through corridors that had once seemed endless, now twisted and oppressive. The gardens, once full of life, were now wild and unkempt, shadows curling around thorns that had grown into thick, almost impassable walls. The enchanted rose glowed dimly ahead, a faint pulse in the darkness. He approached it, hand outstretched, and for the first time hesitated. The air was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on him. Every instinct screamed to turn back, to flee, but the greed that had consumed him would not allow retreat. Almost there, he whispered to himself. Just a little closer, and it is mine. Suddenly, the beast emerged from the shadows. His form was larger than Maurice remembered, more monstrous, more imposing. Claws glinted, eyes glowed with a terrible light, and horns caught the faint gleam of the rose. Maurice froze, realizing too late the folly of his ambition. "You cannot have it," the beast growled, voice echoing through the hall like rolling thunder. Maurice laughed nervously, forcing courage. I only want what is mine. Step aside." The beast's growl deepened, and the castle seemed to respond. Corridors tightening, shadows twisting. The air felt alive, charged with a magic that Maurice could barely comprehend. He took another step, and the ground beneath him seemed to shiver. "You offered your daughter once to save your own life," the beast said, voice low and terrible. "You would endanger her again for greed. You deserve nothing but what you earn here." Maurice's knees trembled, but he did not retreat. I do what I must. The treasures, they are mine." The beast advanced, slow and deliberate, each step shaking the floor. Maurice stumbled backward, heart pounding, realizing the castle was no longer just stone and mortar. It was an extension of the beast's will, responding to every heartbeat, every surge of fear. The rose pulsed faintly, as if sensing the man's intent. Its petals seemed to shiver in warning, and Maurice's breath caught. He reached toward it, and the beast's claws shot out, pinning him to the ground. Maurice screamed, struggling against the force that held him immobile. "You will learn," the beast said, voice echoing with the weight of centuries, "that greed earns nothing but suffering." Maurice's pleas were pitiful. "No, I did not. Spare me. I will give her to you. Take Belle instead." The beast's eyes narrowed. "You offered her once," he said, claws tightening, "and you would offer her again. You are not worthy." Maurice's screams echoed through the halls, blending with the storm outside. The beast's patience had vanished, replaced by a raw, unstoppable force. The magic of the castle pulsed with his anger, shadows stretching, walls shifting, thorns growing to block paths. The man's greed, his desperation, his cowardice, all of it became a trap he could not escape. Maurice's world became darkness. The castle closed in around him, corridors twisting, shadows tightening. He realized, too late, that the castle was not a place to be conquered. It was a living thing, bound to the beast, a reflection of his despair, and he had entered it with nothing but greed to protect him. Outside, Belle watched in horror, powerless to intervene. She heard the screams, felt the tremors through the forest floor. Her heart ached, but she understood. Her father had sealed his own fate. She had warned him, pleaded with him, and yet he had chosen desire over caution. The consequences were now inevitable. The beast did not look toward her. He remained in the shadows, surveying the halls with eyes that burned with sorrow and rage. Maurice's fate had been sealed by his own hands, and the beast no longer had the strength to hope for any redemption for himself or for the world. The castle settled into an eerie silence. Shadows lingered longer, the air hung heavier, and the rose's glow dimmed to almost nothing. The beast roamed the halls, no longer searching for hope, no longer longing for the impossible. He had embraced his fate, a monster in form and spirit, solitary and unyielding. Belle returned to her cottage, but the echo of the beast's despair haunted her. She understood now that some bonds, some love, could not overcome the weight of circumstance, and cruelty. The world was unforgiving, and sometimes the kindest hearts were powerless against the greedy and selfish, and so the castle remained dark, silent and terrible, ruled by a beast who could never become human, and haunted by the consequences of a father's unrelenting greed. The forest was heavy with mist, the air thick and cold, as Belle made her way through the familiar path to the castle. She had not returned for weeks, not since the night her father's greed had nearly cost him his life and irrevocably darkened the beast's halls. Yet something compelled her to go back. She could not live with the uncertainty, the gnawing weight of not knowing if he had survived, if the remnants of kindness she had once cherished were still there, or if the castle itself had claimed him entirely. The village had changed too. Morris's absence, or rather his defeat, left whispers and rumours in its wake. Some said the forest had grown cursed, some that the castle's towers had taken on a life of their own. Belle ignored it all, focusing only on the path before her, heart pounding with apprehension and grief. When she arrived, the castle loomed dark and unwelcoming, shadows pooling like ink in every corner. The doors, once inviting in a strange, enchanted way, now seemed almost hostile, closing behind her with a deliberate finality that made her shiver. The corridors stretched endlessly, echoing the faint drip of water and the whisper of wind through broken panes. The air carried a scent of decay, mingled with the faint perfume of the dying enchanted rose. She found the beast in the great hall, crouched before the fireplace. He did not move at first, his massive frame swallowed by shadows. When he lifted his head, his glowing eyes met hers, not with warmth, not with the spark of hope she had once seen, but with an exhausted, hollow weight. "Belle," he said, voice low and measured, "you return, though you should not. You should not linger here, nor see what I have become." "I could not stay away," she whispered, her throat tight. "I needed to know you were alive. I needed to see you." He shifted slightly, and she saw the scars of months alone etched in the slump of his shoulders, the darkness in his eyes, the stiffness of his movements. The beast had changed, or perhaps he had finally become what he was always meant to be, a creature defined by despair and solitude, stripped of the hope that had once glimmered in the rose's petals. Belle stepped closer, cautiously, her eyes searching his. I forgive you," she said softly, tears slipping down her cheeks, "for what you've lost, for what you cannot change. I know you could never become human again, and I accept that." The beast did not respond. The words seemed to hang in the air, unacknowledged, as though they could not reach him. Belle understood then that forgiveness was meaningless if the recipient had surrendered entirely to despair. I came here to say goodbye," she continued, her voice breaking. Not because I want to, but because I cannot bear to stay. While you suffer like this, you deserve peace, even if I cannot be with you. The beast's glowing eyes flickered. For a brief moment, something softened, a trace of what had once been, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He turned back to the fireplace, letting out a low, rumbling sigh that seemed to shake the stone floor. "You are too good," he murmured, almost to himself. "Too good for this. You should not have seen this. This monster I have become." Belle knelt on the cold stone floor beside him, hands resting lightly on the rough fur of his arm. "Then let me stay, even if only for a moment," she whispered. "Even if it cannot change you, even if the curse cannot be lifted, let me be here with you." The beast did not resist, but he did not embrace her. He allowed her presence, as one might allow a shadow to pass, but there was no warmth, no spark of hope. Belle felt the enormity of the loneliness he had carried, and it crushed her heart. Outside, the storm returned, echoing the tumult inside the castle. Lightning flashed, illuminating the twisted towers and overgrown gardens. The enchanted rose, now nearly lifeless, shimmered faintly, as if acknowledging the presence of the two figures in its shadow. Belle reached toward it instinctively, remembering the countless hours she had spent, marvelling at its beauty, its promise of hope. The petals trembled under her touch, brittle and cold. She realized with a sinking heart that the magic was spent, the beast's fate sealed, the curse irreversible. Her tears fell freely, and for the first time she understood the true cost of greed, of obsession, of choices made in fear and selfishness. Maurice had nearly destroyed everything, but even his defeat could not restore what had been lost. The beast stirred, his gaze flicking toward the rose. "It is over," he said quietly, voice heavy. "There is no changing what has been done. There is no undoing this curse. The world and you deserve more than what I can give." "I do not care what form you take," Belle said softly, clutching his clawed hand. "I only care for you for who you are inside. But I see now. You must carry this alone. I will leave, but I will remember you, always." The beast lowered his head, glowing eyes reflecting the faint light of the rose. He did not respond with words. His silence was more powerful than any declaration. Belle rose slowly, stepping back, her heart breaking with each measured movement. She walked through the halls, retracing steps they had once taken together. Every room, every corridor, every echo reminded her of what had been. Laughter, lessons, fleeting moments of joy. But now the castle had become a monument to despair, and she realized she could not linger. She would survive, carry the memory, but she could not stay where hope had died. At the doors, she paused, looking back One last time, the beast remained in the shadows, watching her with eyes that glowed faintly, a terrible, magnificent sorrow reflected in their depths. The rose lay wilted at the centre of the hall, petals scattered across the floor like the remnants of a dream that had never been realised. Belle's tears blurred her vision. "Goodbye," she whispered. The doors closed behind her, a soft, final thud that echoed through the empty halls. The castle settled into silence, broken only by the faint wind whispering through the towers. The beast remained in the shadows, alone, condemned to a life without hope, a monster in every sense of the word, and yet bound by a memory of kindness too fragile to endure. In the village, Belle tried to resume her life. She spoke little of the castle, of the beast, or of her father's downfall. She tended to her duties, helped the neighbours, and wandered the woods, hoping to find solace in the familiar. But every step, every sound, every flicker of shadow reminded her of the beast's hollow gaze, of the rose's fading glow. She understood now that some love is not enough to overcome fate. Some acts of mercy cannot redeem the broken. Some curses are too powerful to be lifted, even by the purest heart. And in accepting this, she carried the weight of memory, a sorrowful testament to kindness and despair intertwined. The castle remained as it had become, dark, silent, and haunted. Shadows stretched through the corridors, the garden overgrown and untamed. The beast roamed the halls, a creature defined by solitude and despair, no longer capable of hope, no longer yearning for human touch or affection. And outside, the forest whispered, carrying the story of a beast who had loved too much, of a father who had desired too much, and of a girl who had been forced to leave the one being who had shown her true kindness. The enchanted rose lay in the centre of the hall, petals brittle and lifeless, a monument to the tragedy that had unfolded. The beast's form, monstrous and immovable, cast long shadows across the stone floor, a reminder that some stories end not in joy, but in the quiet horror of what cannot be undone. And Belle, carrying her memory and sorrow like a shadow she could not escape, finally understood the true weight of loss, the cost of greed, and the terrible price of hope that is never returned.